Here you can see on the painting I've already put in the nostrils. I did that with a size 2 brush, and I also used completely black paint. Here you can see me mixing a mid-tone grey, so I've used 50% white, 50% black, and then I've added a little more white. So that's giving us the most middle tone of grey. And I'm putting that down just down the sides of the nose, so not on the flat of the nose, just the bit that's starting to angle away, but I'm doing those lines going straight sort of down. Then I'm doing a little curve around each of the nostrils, and then a very sort of shallow U shape for the little bump of the nose as well. I'm using a size 4 here, but if you find it really tricky to go round the nostrils, then that's fine, you can swap to a size 2. You can see that I'm mixing a darker grey here. The majority of the paint I'm using is black with a little bit of white. It's much darker than the previous grey that I've made. I'll hold it up against the colour so you can see. There we go, much darker. Just wiping the brush off now because mixing that colour's ended up with my brush being too loaded. Here I'm doing brush strokes down towards the lips. So this is the skin area just underneath the nose and above the top lip. The reason I'm doing a darker colour is to show the shadow being cast downwards by the nose. I'm also starting to put some of the darker tone in around with the nostrils. I'm swapping back to a size 2 just because it's a little bit fiddly. Just loading my brush. You can see there's hardly any paint on there, and it's right around the edge of the nostril. I'm hardly touching the page at all, so that I'm getting a really nice thin line. Here you can see I'm just blending the mid grey in with the darker grey on the nostrils, just so it's not such a thick line. Now I've gone back in with that dark grey and I'm just going down the side of the nose, so it's strokes slightly curved going downwards. Okay, and then I'm going to bring that around the button of their nose, that sticky up part of our nose, and I'm blending that into the part of the nostril, and then I'm going to bring it along underneath the little sort of smile area as well. I've just popped back in with a little bit of a lighter tone in there again, so it's wet on wet. You're working very quickly blending these tones. So I'm back in with the dark, bring it round. Okay, it's not covering quite so much of the area of the nose on the left hand side. Can you see how I've left that fairly blank at the moment? That's now going in with that slightly mid-tone grey. It's the much lighter grey. We tend to have one side of the nose lighter than the other, so we've got a shadow effect. So this is the mid-tone grey, and then I'm just blending a little bit of the darker tone grey in, but it's not going all the way down. And then we've got a nice blend of the two tones there. So here I'm using the size 4 brush again, and I'm mixing a much lighter tone now. I'm going for a very light grey, so mostly white, little bit of black, mixing it around. I'm not using much pressure when I'm mixing, so don't really force those bristles down because that's how we ruin paintbrushes. Just spin it round very lightly. Any excess paint you can wipe off on the side. Okay, and this lighter tone is going, there we go, wiping a bit more off, it was too much on there. I'm putting it straight down the middle of the nose, right away from the top there, which is almost between the eyes, coming all the way down, and then pulling, then curving round. I'm going over where I've been before. It's not the end of the world, I can tidy that up a little bit later. And you can see now the nose is starting to look 3D. Okay, so I need it to pop away from the face, so where the nostrils and the under part of the nose are all joining up to the face, I'm putting in this very light tone as well. Okay, so again around the nostrils, making sure I don't cover up that dark edge that I had before. Where the nose is now joining the face, putting that in again around the nostrils, going a little bit further up the face, up towards where the eyes are. You can see I've accidentally gone a little bit too far, but I can correct that in. There we go, smoothing that out, and this is where the face is joining the nose now. Here you can see I've already put down that dark tone where the nose and the face connect, and I've got an awful lot of that light tone down as well. I'm now going in with that mid-tone grey where the very light grey is already wet, and I'm blending those two together. You need to make sure you don't have too much on your brush at this point. And it's just working over it and blending it and blending it. You'll also see me tidying up a few little areas I was a bit too quick over earlier on. Tidying those up. Again, while both the lighter tone and the slightly darker tone of grey are wet, I can blend those two together. It's all about blending the nose, a bit like when we're doing the shaded drawing. No harsh lines, it's all about blending things together. In a moment you're going to see me wash out my brush. Do that throughout the painting. Top tip, if you've washed out your brush might be too soggy then when you put your paint back onto the page. One, you could test it in your sketchbook first to make sure that's not the case, and two, you can just wipe it off on a little bit of tissue just as I'm doing there, and that way you won't get that soggy, overly watery paint. Here you're going to see me just slightly reshaping the nostrils. This is something you can do at any point in the painting. If you're not quite happy with an area, you can just go back and work in. Paint's brilliant, you can just go over and over it until you're happy with it. You can either do it when it's dry or when it's wet, depends how you like to work. If you're going for an extra little bit of detail, you might want to use the darker tone of grey just to go around the outside edge of the nostril hole. So on the outer edge only, not necessarily right in towards where the centre of the nose is, just an extra little bit of shadowing. You can also see I'm putting a little bit of shadowing underneath the button of the nose. And I'm going back up to the top here, and I'm just doing a little bit more blending where I can see too much of a harsh line showing. So again, I'm just revisiting those three tones and then blending those back in. Here I'm just putting in the highlights, so where the light reflects we tend to put in highlights in white. I'm putting a little bit of a straight line, it's not completely solid, it kind of fades away down one side of the nose, and I'm also putting a little bit on the button end of the nose, the bit of our nose that sticks out and is closest to anybody looking at us. You may find it easier to do this when it's dry, but you can always blend it away a little bit while it's still wet using that wet on wet technique so you don't get any harsh lines. And you can see I've been a bit overzealous, so I'm just kind of knocking it back again by doing a little bit more blending. So again, if you use too much white you can blend it back again until you're happy with it. And there we go. Last little touch, I just revisited the shadow there, and you can see that the bottom of the nose and where the nostrils are and the start of the lips, you can't see much definition. I'm just getting a point there on my bristles, going back in with the darkest grey that I've got, very fine point, just doing that little bit of the dip of the nose in the centre. So, and then I'm going to just blend it away again so it's not too strong a line because it was showing up a bit too much. There we go, knocking it back, just so the nose edge is defined a little bit. And in close up you can see the final nose, you can see the paint still wet. That's the wet on wet technique with 5 tones.